Welcome to Tech Talk with R&E Automated. I'm your host, Jordan Dieterle. Join us as we dive into the world of automation and manufacturing, bringing you expert insights from industrial professionals and business leaders. Whether you're a business owner, engineer, or simply passionate about technology, this podcast is your go-to source for the latest trends and innovations in the field. Hey, welcome everybody to Tech Talk with R&E. I'm your host, Jordan Dieterle. Today here I have Matt Venuto with CRC Metal Recycling. I'm excited for this one as we're talking about battery technology and the recycling of them. We're going to learn how much prep work is involved with them and how much risk is involved with the metal recycling industry and with batteries. And I'd like to introduce Matt here. Welcome, Matt.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on, Jordan.
Yeah, awesome. So Matt, I would love to hear, I do this a lot, with everybody that comes on, because, it's always good to get a perspective and learn what your background was. So what do you do at CRC Metal Recycling, and what was your background in?
Yeah, so grew up in Myrtle Beach, went to Clemson University, went back, worked in hospitality in Myrtle Beach, kind of like management training program for a smaller private company. So kind of done the gamut for restaurants and hotels and that side of it, and then got out of that when I moved up to Greenville. Wanted to get into some type of sales account management, which is what my other family members do. And ended up with a multinational company here in the upstate in the metal recycling business. Fast forward to today, this is my 11th year in the metal recycling business. I sit on a couple association boards per se. One's the South Carolina Recycling Association for metal recyclers. I'm vice president of that. So that's anything with advocacy, education of metal recycling in South Carolina. Also, the Recycled Materials Association. I'm on the membership committee for that. One of the co-chairs with a guy named Barry Wolf. So we recruit people from mostly metal recycling anywhere in the Southeast, but also people in the paper industry, people in the plastic industry. It's a very encompassing industry.
Mm-hmm.
It does a lot of good, right? Our biggest strength for the recycled materials industry is we work with companies, we work with the national government, local agencies, we work with governments all over the world and companies all over the world to find out what works the best for metal recyclers to do well in their own space, right? From profitability standpoint, from a legislative standpoint, from how can we make the systems more efficient, right? We deal with a lot of environmental stuff, regulation, compliance. So it's a very sophisticated industry. It's a very big industry too, but it's big in the sense that, it's a lot of dollars, a lot of impact on the economy. As we always say, recycling is essential to any entity around the world. So it's very important to stay engaged in those spaces.
Yeah. I mean, I heard you say it's very essential. I would agree. I mean, obviously, we only have one planet that we can live on, right? So if we're not recycling, if we're not recycling, we're in trouble. So I would like to, I know it's more on the recycling, and you and I've had this conversation multiple times, and I'm tailoring it towards the battery technology thing because I watched Tesla and Elon Musk tell me about their all the new technology coming out, and I'm like, man, I've had conversations with Matt, and I'm looking at it like, what are we gonna do with those batteries when they go bad? So obviously, it's something that you did a lot of research on and learned more on. And what is your, I wouldn't say opinion, but your thoughts on that over the course of years to come, how are we going to get rid of them? What are we going to do? Right.
Yeah. So battery, in terms of lithium-ion batteries, EV, electric vehicle batteries, they have a future in the recycling world. Currently, the U.S. doesn't have a infrastructure system set up per se to handle the life cycle of a battery from soup to nuts, we'll call it. They're currently in the process of doing that, right? Right now, they get a lot of the batteries from overseas. They come over, and then they're starting the recycling process. So the recycling process will work as you have the supplier of the battery, right? Like a Proterra.
Mm-hmm.
They would take the battery and then they would sell it to a recycling company. And the recycling company, there are two phases to recycle batteries. One is the decharging of the unit to make sure it's safe, right? And even before that, it might end up at a CRC, but not particularly. A lot of these are going to ship directly from the supplier to the recycling center. So let's just talk about that.
Yeah.
Direct from Proterra to, let's say, Redwood. Redwood would receive the battery, they would decharge it, they would make sure it's safe, then they're going to put it in a module where they grind it up, right, at low speeds. Obviously, it's not going to catch on fire or go into what they call thermal runaway because it is decharged unit, right? We don't have to worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
They, at that point, are going to end up with what they call black mass or black matter, which is the good stuff. It almost looks like black flour. We saw it down in Georgia at a plant that is in phase one production right now. They also end up with a few other byproducts, one being like solid casting aluminum, no different than like engine block would be made out of.
Mm-hmm.
And then some other miscellaneous metals that can be refined at other stages from whether they export that material or they sell it domestic. That stuff, those markets will develop over time as well. The black mass, black matter is what they're after. From there, they go to phase two. Phase two, Redwood is doing right now out in Reno at the Giga plant near Tesla. But they actually take that and they put it in what they call a low heat furnace, and they heat those elements up and they do what they call leaching. So then they're able to extract and separate the four elements that they're trying to get back. And you can look up those four elements. Those four elements will then go to a battery in whatever state. I think when they show them to us, they look like pellets almost, right?
Oh,
Almost
wow.
like plastic pellets.
Yeah.
They go to a battery maker, right? Or manufacturer. And
Okay.
so once they get those four elements, send them back to the battery maker, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they are creating this closed loop from supplier to recycling company to battery producer to back to supplier. Or it might make another jump to another area and then back to supplier, if that makes sense.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. I remember you and I talking, they were just laying them out in the field out there, just letting them sit until they figured it out. I'm like, what
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
world's going
Well,
on?
they have, they were building quite the stockpile in Reno. I want to say it's like 5 or 10 acres, and they're sitting in an area where, even if they were to go into what they call thermal runaway, they are containable. There are people like our friend Brian Lawrence who sells a fire isolator blanket that you can cover these units with. Now,
Mm-hmm.
it is not going to put out fire. That's another misnomer. Once the fire starts, it cannot be put out by water or dunking it in a tank or
That's crazy.
covering it with dirt or anything under the sun. You can't put it won't go out, right? The
Yeah.
only thing it's going to get it to go out, I would imagine, is if you stop the oxygen, which when it's already in that runaway state, I don't know how you're going to stop the oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
But it's basically going to burn infinitely until it either goes out on its own or it runs out of a fuel source for itself.
Yeah.
Um,
Huh.
yeah, ways you can prevent that when we ship these batteries, they actually ship as hazardous material under Code 9. There's a section in DOT. I'm going to get it wrong, but it's like 49 dash whatever.
I'll
There's a
put it
whole
in the note.
section that the Department of Transportation has deemed this is how you have to ship the batteries. And they work with a company called Call to Recycle. Call to Recycle was formed by 6 battery manufacturers, and they are actually a non-profit, and they help the Redwoods and the Ascend Elements of the world they're setting up the supply chain so that them and DOT can all work together to handle the batteries in a very safe way, right? No different than, hazardous chemicals and material moves all around the United States. Like, let's not act like this is not happening in
Mhm.
other sections of the economy, right?
Yeah.
So moving nuclear waste, right? They do that now. You would
Yeah.
never know it unless you look at the bottom of the truck with the little emblem that says hazardous waste, right?
Yeah.
But they're moving that and they're transporting it in a very as safe a fashion as they can physically and monetarily make for those people to handle those things. So they do have that DOT section uh,
Mm.
that's observing that. Now, in every state, it's going to be a little bit different to try to make sure that everything's covered in some sense. Are we, I think people worry about like a East Palestine railroad
Yeah.
taking it off the grid. Like, are there going to be a whole truckload of these things and they're going to have a problem? Actually, when in that DOT section, they actually, if they are damaged, what they call DDR, damaged, they go into containers and then they take this almost like pellet type stuff and they put it in there
Mhm.
with the battery and then they shut the case and lock it. So if the battery were to try to catch fire inside that case, those pellets and that stuff would stop that from happening. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
people should be less worried about uh, transporting those batteries. The issue that I see mostly is the batteries being in accidents and
Mhm.
them dealing with the fires, the fire department, which our friend Brian, he does a lot of training with fire departments on how to deal with those batteries when they do go into thermal runaway.
Yeah. So it kind of leads into my next thought is like the infrastructure challenges, like as batteries become more prevalent in the world, like have they thought of ways that, we could put out those cars that are on there? Cause I mean, Tesla's not stopping making cars, and there's a lot of other companies that are building more batteries, right? I mean, we're gaining more and more, um, I guess, technology that uses batteries, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
have the policymakers, and the law enforcement and like all them, like have they came up with a way to, put those? I mean, you did say that you really can't put them out, but are they trying to find a solution to solve that, right? And I
Those
mean, I
those
kind of had two questions
batteries,
there, but
yeah, those batteries go through a lot of testing, right? And even the
Mm,
guys that are training people, they call themselves the Energy Security Agency. They
okay,
do a lot of training for our industry up in Ohio. They take those batteries out to the desert and they try to blow them up every which way you could
that'd
ever
be sweet.
imagine, right? They put them through the worst conditions to see exactly what is the worst case scenario. They actually get called when there are big issues like something like the equivalent, maybe not as big as East Palestine, but
Mm,
something that's bigger than anybody really knows what to deal with. They usually are the first people on site dealing with that issue.
okay.
At one point last year, there was a cargo ship that caught fire, one of the containers that had
Mm,
lithium-ion batteries in it. And so
oh
they got
wow.
called and flown to the container ship to deal with that, right?
Mm,
So, yes, people are trying to work on what is the best solution to manage that. You also have the Surface Transportation Board. They're dealing with this, right? They're the ones that investigate when there are issues in big commercial vehicle crashes, right? So you have
mm,
that going on. I know that the future of lithium-ion batteries is a thing that Elon Musk and these other people are working on called solid state technology, right?
Yo.
Now we're still like 10 years out from the solid state. That's basically going to take the batteries from, hey, we're going to get 200 miles out of a charge or 300 miles out of a charge to we're going to get 500 or 600 miles out of a charge, right? That
Yeah.
kind of thing. Now, I know that what I don't know is, are those batteries going to be safer, right? I don't know that.
Yeah.
The other thing is, if you make it, at least from where metal recyclers sit, if you make it totally indestructible, like,
Yeah.
how are you going
Yeah.
to recycle it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Other than blowing it up first, right? I don't know the end. So we're actually telling people, you got to make it more efficient for us to recycle it. But then the people on the road that see all the accidents are like, you got to make it more indestructible, right? So you have very diverging paths, right?
Yeah.
You want to see
what,
both. You want to
yeah.
see both if at all possible,
You know what came to my mind though was I could see you running out there with dynamite. Right? We're blowing up
Yeah,
some blowing up some batteries today and putting them out
yeah,
there. That's kind of what came to my mind. And I'm
yeah.
like, oh
Another
man, that'd be
another
great.
thing people should be worried about is if you're unsure of what to do with these batteries, please do not take these batteries and store them in a container, right? Like a
Mm.
sea container. Don't ever store these batteries in a sea container that is not does not have at least some ventilation in it, right? Because we
Mm.
have had instances where people put them in the storage sea containers, they shut the doors, and they actually emit off gassing, right? They'll just start off
Oh.
gassing out of nowhere. You
Mm-hmm.
open those doors uh, and you introduce oxygen into that, and it's basically like arc flash. And you know what an
That's
arc
great.
flash is.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
I
yeah,
don't need
yeah.
to explain to your listeners what an arc flash is. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not a pretty sight.
No, it's not. It's kind of crazy to witness or ever be involved in.
Yeah,
But yeah, it overall, I think we've even talked about that. Like, hey, companies were like, hey, what can we do to, um, you know, I guess collaborate and make and solve that problem? They said, well, if we put them in a building and shut the doors, we can't access the building. So then in turn, it turned into well, how do we insure that building that we just built, right? For
yes.
you guys as recyclers. So you really can't store them, in a building unless it's like,
So they
ventilated and
are
everything, right?
they are building these buildings now, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like the redwoods of the world can afford to build these buildings where they're
Yep.
building a racking system, and then you're able to store, like, I don't even know, 6 or 8 of these modules inside a cell unit,
Mm-hmm.
and they can actually sense, right? Let's say the thermal temperature of the unit is 72 degrees Fahrenheit. When it starts ticking up to like 80, 90 degrees, they can actually contain that unit and almost flush maybe some kind of retardant in there and stop that at point of capture, if that makes sense, right? But we're
Okay.
talking about a building that is millions and millions and millions of dollars to build. We're not talking about a regular, hey, we got a spec building, we'll throw up some, racks and we'll put this suppression. No, no.
Yep.
The other thing that they can do that when they store these, right, is they can actually decharge. So I met the manufacturer that builds the decharging unit, right? So they take the battery out and they stick it in this decharging unit,
Mm-hmm.
and they can actually pull the power from the battery, and they can use it, they can store it, or they can sell it back to the grid. No different than if me or you or either any of our businesses in the state of South Carolina, solar panels,
Yep.
you can use the energy, you could store the energy, or at a agreed upon market rate in the state of South Carolina, you can sell your energy back to like a Duke Power, and Duke
Yep.
Power has to buy that energy from you.
Yeah,
fuel.
I like
So
my solar. I have solar on my house. It's kind of
you
nice.
do.
I do,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's
You
pretty
got them at your
lucrative.
house?
Yep, I
Yeah.
do
So
have
you
them at
know
my house.
exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
I mean the only downfall was is during the hurricane I still didn't have power for 8 days,
Yeah.
but it
It's
was
kind of dark outside.
yeah it didn't I decided not to go with the batteries, but it worked out well. I mean, you know, it was kind of crazy. My electric bill was kind of crazy. So, but I'm always for the renewable energy, kind of thing. If we can help, the environment on it, I always look at that, and it's kind of like, you know, an avenue, to, benefit, the environment. And I'm also looking at it as like, hey, it helped me, you know, get a new roof. So it was
Yeah.
like, hey, an avenue that there, and my electric bill went down. And it wasn't terrible,
And
but
you're not affected by the new rate increase from Duke Energy at
mm,
8% to residential customers this
yeah,
year. Yeah,
yeah,
August. Yep.
yeah. It was pretty lucrative. I was pretty happy with the team that put them on for me. And I mean, I would add more if I could, but my roof's
Yeah.
kind of full.
Are you
um,
ever in a net like zero or net positive situation where they're actually paying you or not?
so yeah, so when I first got them, yes, I was, where they were paying me, and it was like, hey, like you don't have any, you know, you didn't use any power for a couple months. Like this time right now, usually I don't use any power and I don't have a bill.
Oh
And then
wow.
it turns into, down the road, when it gets to like July, I'll get a
Yeah.
bill,
You'll
and
get a bill. Okay. Yeah.
so it definitely it reduced it by like 80%. So
Oh
I mean I
wow.
pay like 20% of my electric bill. So overall and I mean, I did it during the COVID time, so it worked out well for the rate and everything like that. It was just worth, the buy. But I mean, being a licensed electrician, I have any issues, I just go up and fix it.
No, that's
So
a good point. Yeah.
yeah,
Not
they did.
everybody has that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Not
so I
every-
mean, I've had one issue so far, and I mean, I just called the supplier. They sent me the thing, and I replaced it. Right, so a couple wires, and just taking it off my house, but nothing crazy. But it happened like right before the hurricane, so I didn't get too bad. I didn't even have solar running, so I really can't.
Yeah. You have
It wouldn't have mattered.
insurance on the panels like for a hailstorm?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah.
It's covered
Yeah.
with it's covered with your insurance policy. You
Okay.
just have to
Okay.
notify them that you do have the solar panels on there. So
Okay.
yeah, it's pretty lucrative. I mean, I couldn't complain. I was pretty happy with mine. But
Nice.
yeah, and so with all the renewable stuff that is coming out, right? I'm looking at like long-term viability of it all, right? I mean, what happens when we go to, lithium? I mean, obviously I've heard you say that we're looking at a way to recycle it and bring it back to the, makers, battery manufacturers. But how do you see that affecting, like, I feel like they can't get 100% back, or maybe I'm wrong, or maybe I'm misspeaking that you can, because every time like you use the battery, the life of the battery, goes down. I mean, I watch it on my phone. My efficiency of my phone is at 100% when I buy a new one. I think mine now is at like 82. Once it gets past like 80, it's like,
Right.
man, my phone's dead by noon. you know,
Right.
so
Right. Right.
that's kind of what I'm curious of. What do you think that is? And
I mean,
or,
the recyclers are telling us the more we recycle the batteries, the more efficient the material gets, right? Over
really
time, which
interesting.
I thought was very interesting. The other
Yeah.
thing that's good about recycling is, like now we're having to buy everything from overseas. So they've also told us that 60% of the cost to make a EV car is the battery pack itself. So the
Mm-hmm.
more you recycle and refine that stuff here, as opposed to relying on everybody else around the world to do that for you, you bring the cost of the batteries and the cars themselves down considerably, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
I think in itself will help spur the market. The problem is that, you know, electricity is is obviously a commodity, but it's going to be an insane, very valuable commodity with this divergence of we're going to need so much power for AI and we're going to need so much power to power everything on the grid. I don't know
Yeah.
where all energy is going to come from, honestly.
Yeah. The
Even if they
infrastructure.
wanted to build a nuclear plant today on an existing site, we'll say,
Hmm.
I mean, you're talking about 20 years, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, it's insane just to build a nuclear plant. Now, they've got some nuclear plants. Microsoft said they'd give those guys $1 billion to start 3 Mile Island, which is where they had that one meltdown back in the day. But yeah, the
Yeah.
energy demand is going to take a lot. Now, one thing that I have learned is if the U.S. could just reduce their dependence on oil by 1% or
Hmm.
2% or 5 or 10%, right?
Yeah.
That does so much to the price of oil. You don't
Mm.
have the Chinese as aggressive or growing as much as they used to, right? So that kind of affects a lot of geopolitical things as well. When the
Yeah.
price of oil is not $100 a barrel and it's like it is now, it's $70 a barrel. It's a
Hmm.
way different world than if it's at $100 a barrel. Now, can they
Yeah.
reduce capacity? They can, but then they're also reducing how much money they're making. They don't like doing that.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
That's totally
Mm-hmm.
it right there. They don't let they
So, I
don't want
mean,
to
like,
reduce that.
I don't think you'll ever see it like in our lifetime where we're 100% on renewable sources. Now, the other thing that
Mm.
they're doing that I read a lot about, I follow the EIA, the Energy, I don't know what they call them. It's basically the government website where they track all the energy commodities and stuff, and they're making
Mm.
sustainable airline fuel. And so
Oh
they
wow.
substitute jet fuel.
Mm.
50% of it's jet fuel now. The other 50% uh, is basically like food byproducts, like kind of like
Okay.
ethanol, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
they can actually mix 50% ethanol type food products, right? In
Hmm.
with what they call jet fuel, and it will fly the jet the same way, which I thought is very cool. So they call those biofuels, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
that's a big market that's growing. And so if you're doing something like that, then you are reducing your demand on oil and carbon. All those things are good.
Yeah. Yeah. You're basically like you're the way that I would look at that. You're extending the life of like fuel overall, right?
Yep.
Same thing with like a battery. We're trying to find ways to extend the life of something, whether it be the vehicle or the oil or the battery, whatever, right? I mean, if it's kind of like when you're mowing your lawn, you don't put unleaded in there, you put premium in, right?
Yep.
I want my my lawnmower to last forever.
Right.
So I mean, that's the way I always was taught. I don't know about anybody else, but it was the way I was taught. So
That's
I
that's
think
it.
it's just trying to
Yeah,
extend the
that must be
lives.
a Michigan thing.
Yeah.
I would always put unleaded in there.
I always put premium. I mean, I don't, it must be a Michigan thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something that, I always did and I still do today. I don't know why I paid, but I mean, hey, this is better quality. That's what I've always been
Right.
told.
Right.
So, no, that's a lot of information. I think it's really good. So what I would like, kind of in end closing, what would you recommend, for, manufacturers to do, for their recycling operation? I know I've talked a lot about, having manufacturers to say supporting them in any way you possibly can. And I'd love them, I'd love you to share ways for them to connect with you because I think it's really good and for them to see and hear, options that they have for, recycling their metal. Even obviously we talked more on the battery side, but what is a way that, manufacturers in the upstate and around the area can connect with you to, hey, if they do have a need for, metal recycling, they can always, get a hold of you.
Yeah. I mean, they can always email me at Matt at crcmetalrecycling.com. they'll reach out to me on LinkedIn. I mean, there's a whole host of ways they can call CRC Direct and get to me. So yeah, I mean, anybody could reach out about anything that has to do with metal recycling. I took a call earlier from a guy at, I believe it was Clemson University, and they were asking about the aluminum cans, microbrewery, and the actual. A lot of the microbreweries are having to put that plastic label on because the big can companies won't print, but they want to print like 4 truckloads of the same label, which I get.
Mm.
That's an efficiency thing. So
Yep.
they actually have to go to a plastic label on an aluminum can. They want to know if the can's still recyclable. And I'm like, absolutely, it's still recyclable. Now,
Mm.
do the aluminum mills like it that it's got the plastic? No, but they still have a way of getting around that. Anybody tells you it's not recyclable is lying to you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. Say it. I mean,
Yeah.
it
The
sounds
other
like
the other
even
one the other
schools are
one that
calling
I
it.
get a lot is glass recycling.
Yeah.
Ever since the city and the county got rid of glass recycling, it's like if it's not metals and it's not EVs, battery, lithium-ion battery, the next one
Mhm.
is glass, municipal
Yeah.
glass. We have a friend, Zeb Parsons at Brick Lodge in
Hmm.
Piggins, that does some of the glass recycling, but that is a real opportunity for people to get in. Uh, there needs to be what we call sustainable markets, right? So those glass recyclers have to make money no different than metal recyclers for that to be a viable industry, right?
Yep.
A lot of end users for recycled glass. You can make beach sand. You can make stuff to like go into a drain field. You can make
That's crazy.
stuff that you can almost make baby powder out of recycled glass. What Zeb's told me, right? So
Yeah.
those are just a few for people to think about
Yeah.
um, in terms of recycled products for glass. But glass is a big one.
Yeah.
I personally, as a metal recycler, I would say, hey, let's put everything in an aluminum can. But
Yeah.
it doesn't work that way, I guess.
No, it doesn't. But no, that's good. I mean, I'm still not convinced on the baby powder though.
Right?
I mean,
Here's the
that's
other thing.
crazy.
Here's the other thing. If people are just sitting out there and they're like, hey, how can I make a difference in recycling? The consumer ultimately has a big stance into what happens, right? So if
Hmm.
you only bought products that are recyclable, like like if everybody did that, right?
Hmm.
Then the world would change for the better. 100%.
Yeah.
Without a
Yeah,
doubt.
we'd be reusing resources after resources after resources, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Like if we
it
all
wouldn't
went
be.
to Trader Joe's and Whole Foods and we're like, man, we're not gonna buy the packaged food here anymore unless it's in recyclable carton,
Yep.
they would absolutely change that 100%.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's a great note to
And
make,
there
and I
are
think
guys
looking
out
at that.
there like Wes at Atlantic Packaging that are working with bigger companies to make a reusable, recyclable packaging, right?
Hmm.
Uh, they got away from one of the customers wanted to get away from the you probably seen a lot of pictures of the wildlife getting caught up in those 6-packs with the plastic
Yep.
cup holders, right?
Oh yeah.
And so they made I think they call it fishbone or something, but they made a carrier that was made out of cardboard that was still really lightweight and was able to hold those cans, right? You
Hmm.
also see a lot of cans now, like if you go to the stores, they are packaged in those smaller cardboard containers, right?
Yep.
Just to get away from those plastic, which was killing all the wildlife, when it
Which is
made its
great.
way into.
Which is kind of crazy. You would have never expected that, but I mean, it happened, and now hey, they're finding a solution around it, which is hey, that's a good.
Yes.
People
Yeah.
are developing and trying to find out solutions to save the wildlife.
I mean, at
Obviously.
the end of the day, plastic has made the world very convenient, right? Has solved a
Hmm.
lot of issues. There's a lot of things that are made from plastic that, we wouldn't even think of that we need for modern day life, I feel like. But I mean, one of the things is like they just built a new grocery store here, for example. They have when you go to the checkout at Sprouts, they have a reusable plastic bag that you got to pay 10 cents for if you want a bag. And it's a little bit thicker plastic bag than you're used to. You can actually reuse it, right?
Yep.
But they technically could get rid of every plastic bag if they wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah, you just have to bring your own bags, right?
Yes. Yep.
Which is really hard to do when you're stopping on the way. But yes, I have bought
I
those
had
and used them.
mine
Yeah.
in the back of my truck in my toolbox. I don't
Yeah.
understand why this isn't working.
You carry them in.
Or
Yeah.
you just pay 10 cents for every bag you
Yeah.
use.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you get
Then you
that
can
bigger one, and you're
recycle
like, dude, fill it up more. Like you got one item in there,
it. Yep. No, I agree. It's I'm like trying to shove them in as much as I can so I don't have to carry as many bags.
Yes. Yeah. I
Oh,
carry
good.
that one that's kind of like insulated. So you put the
Okay.
cold stuff on the bottom and it just keeps everything nice and cool inside of there. It's perfect,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That is a good one. Well, hey, Matt, I appreciate it. I think this is a good one. I think everybody will enjoy, hearing this. And for the listeners, please reach out to Matt if you need any recycling needs. And if you need to get a hold of me, don't hesitate to reach out to me on my LinkedIn or shoot me an email or give me a call. My phone number and email is on my LinkedIn. I'm Jordan Dieterle. I'm your host, and I'm signing off.
So, yeah.